Bows, TKOs, yeah. Bows, TKOs, we got Bows, TKOs, yeah. Bows, TKOs, we got Bows, TKOs, yeah. Bows, TKOs.
Bows and TKOs. We are live, episode 66, coming at you from the Valley. My name is Shane Gillette for your weekly MMA podcast, streaming anywhere you get podcasts with videos on YouTube. And one hell of a show we have this weekend as I get to talk about my past weekend's experience at UFC 306 in Viva Las Vegas at the Sphere. And boy, was it one hell of an experience. So I get to break it down to you firsthand what the aura it was of what Dana White's words is the best live sporting event of all time. We have some fights that have been announced. We'll recap what happened in the Bellator Championship Series and Dana White's Contender Series Episode 6, as well as UFC 306. Nothing to preview this weekend as we have an intermission weekend. But yeah, let's jump right into this bad boy. We have my UFC Noche merch. You can see the fight poster on the back. Legendary card, no matter how you slice it. I know a lot of people want to knock it, but you have the bantamweight champion, one of the most competitive divisions in the UFC history. You have Valentina Shevchenko, the GOAT, and all of the fun Mexican heritage involved. So I had to get myself some UFC Noche memorabilia for the one and done event. But some fun fights that we have announced at UFC 307. Nate the Trained Landwehr will be out, and insert Alexander Hernandez against Austin Hubbard, two-time UFC alum and Ultimate Fighter veteran alum. For UFC 308, we have added Said Nurmagomedov, who is back to the UFC, taking on Daniel Santos. For UFC 309, we have some fights booked. We have Bo Nickel taking on Paul Craig. Finally, we get to see Bo Nickel back into the octagon, taking on, a top 15 type opponent. See what he's ready for. We have officially the MSG headliner, John Jones, Stipe Miocic, finally happening in November. And also on UFC 309, Michael Chandler's sick of waiting. Finally, after wasting his prime days since his UFC transition from Bellator, will be taking on Charles Oliveira, which should be a fun fight at MSG. And there is still an opportunity he might fight Conor McGregor going into the new year. We also have on September 28th, Taylor Lapilus versus Vince Morales. Vince Morales won the UFL Fight League here in Arizona. He defeated Montana's own Hunter Azure by a nasty choke. Really hard fought fight to get back into the UFC. Him and Hunter both had been in the UFC. So he gets to fight Taylor Lapilus in his next UFC stint. For October 12th, we have Daniel Rodriguez and Alex Morano. That should be a doozy. And then November 9th, we have Karolina Kowalkiewicz and Denise Gomes. And then for UFC 310, we have Virna Jandiroba and Tatiana Suarez most likely going down for the title shot. Tatiana Suarez taking the time off, just gets to jump right in for the title. I was going to say for title eliminator, and then I was like, wait, Virna has the title? No, she doesn't. So winner here, title eliminator, gets to go in and fight for the strap. So, also, bummer news for the Utah Salt Lake City card. Aljamain Sterling out of his fight against Movsar Evloev. Hurt his arm right before the fight. Hate to see it. Movsar had been clamoring for a new opponent. Didn't like it, so he has gone back to Russia and will not be on that card at all. So sucks if you were stoked to see one of those two for that ticket. Regardless, also in MMA this past weekend, we had the Bellator Championship Series early because it was in London, I believe. On Saturday, we had Sarah Collins with a round one submission via rear naked choke over Leah McCourt. We had former ex-UFC fighter Mark DeCasey with a unanimous decision over Tim Wilde. And then undefeated Wyoming wrestling alum Archie Colgan with a unanimous decision over Manuel Sousa, who was also undefeated. Big win for Archie. We had Bryce Meredith a couple weeks ago. Archie getting those dubs, doing their thing under the Bellator umbrella. But we had Dana White Contender Series Episode 6. We had lightweight Ahmad Hassanzada with a round 3 submission via rear naked choke over Dylan Mantello. This is just a savage fight. Hassanzada had dominated with grappling in round 1. Mantello dang near knocked him out in round 2. And they were gassed in round 3, but Ahmad pushed deep, used his grappling to get the finish and get a UFC contract. Solid lightweights there. In the middleweight, we had Atiba Gaudier with a round 2 TKO over Yura Naito. And this is all about the power advantage. Another fighter from Cameroon got that Francis Ngannou-like power and torque as he clipped his opponent. And Naito was just really trying to survive. He got a takedown to last at the end of round 1 to last around 2. But Atiba gets the contract. He is a force to be reckoned with. That middleweight division just is stacked with hard hitters anyways. In welterweight, we had Benjamin Bennett with a split decision over Joey Hart. This was a hard-fought battle, lots of grappling involved. No contract was awarded for Bennett. And then in heavyweight, we had Taliesin Teixeira, a massive, massive heavyweight with a brutal round 1 knockout over Arthur Lopez for a UFC contract. And then for the main event, we had the 22-year-old Elijah Smith, another hard-fought battle. He had a unanimous decision victory over Aaron Tao, but he earns a contract. Very high-level fighters, they were there. But Taliesin Teixeira, Elijah Smith, still in the show. Some solid bouts as we get more contracts and sets us up for episode 7 next week. But let's jump right into, we got UFC Fight Night Vegas 306 recap. I went 5-5 in my picks. Not a great night of picks. I was feeling really hot in the prelims as I got all the prelims right, but not a lot on the main card. I thought like I was going to go undefeated. But overall for Bows and TKOs, we're at 398 wins, 201 losses, 7 no contests or draws, 205 wins on the year, 115 losses, 4 no contests or draws. So a fight that we did not break down, we had a huge underdog shocker, especially getting a round 1 submission. You gotta give him credit. We had Ketlin Souza with a round 1 submission via rear naked choke over Yasmin Yarguay. Performance of the night, 50 G's for the underdog. But to give you my full card recap, I'll just break down the weekend and how it went for me as a fan in attendance. Overall, I gave the card 8 out of 10 for performance. Mexico finished 2 wins, 7 losses on the night. So brutal night for the Mexican Independence Day and the Mexican heritage. But as a fan, I had an absolute blast. I thought the ticket was well worth the price of admission, which, you know, I've been pretty lucky, got into some sweet UFC cards. I went to my very first card, John Jones and Thiago Santos, for my birthday on International Fight Week a few years back. Amazing card that was. Jorge Masvidal with the fastest knockout ever with the knee. Got to see Amanda Nunes and Holly Holm fight, let alone the banger of a John Jones fight. Then my next bouts, a lot of it had to include, you know, the Sugar Show, Sean O'Malley, following him as a Montana boy. You always root for the Montana and Wyoming boys. I grew up in Wyoming until junior high, and then went to Montana from junior high until I graduated college. Was in Seattle, now here in Phoenix. But I'm always rooting for the small town Montana and Wyoming guys. Not many people make it out of there. You got to celebrate them. Oh, yeah, and by the way, Sean O'Malley is pretty fucking good. So I went to a couple different cards with him. Got to go to UFC 299 in Miami. Got to see a couple other International Fight Week cards in Las Vegas. And then really wanted to get the Sphere. It was like, okay, I'm assuming they're going to charge like nosebleed seat $1,000. They started at $5,000 on pre-sale. I was checking all day long, every day of the week for the first week. The tickets were not going down. I felt defeated, was about to give up. I checked every ticket broker website you could imagine. And then about 2 weeks before the event, ticket prices started going down, and we were able to get a 400 level seat almost to the top of that dang sphere, which is way up there, by the way, for about $830 per person. Me and two other friends from Montana had went to the event, and we settled on that price with fees. I'm not too mad about it, $832. So fly in Friday, get a nice steak dinner. You gotta, get a nice little steak dinner. I've gone to the weigh-ins before. The weigh-ins are okay. The cooler part about the weigh-ins is you usually see a lot of fighters there, especially for the Sphere. I'm sure there was a ton because they had a 2-day event for the fans, meet and greets, that kind of thing. I don't like staying in line in the heat for those types of things. I'm a, grown-ass adult. I don't need to go wait to see another adult or have them sign or take a photo. I don't care that much. So I didn't really want to go to the weigh-ins. I'd rather have a nice little steak dinner. Why? Well, your boy's about to buy a house, which is kind of a big thing. So it's a little bit of a celebration to get my very first home here in the Valley. Very grateful for that. Still going through the closing process, which anything can happen, but it seems like we're all set up for that. So wanted to have a steak dinner with my friend, gambled a little bit, had some fun with some blackjack, stuff like that. But then on Saturday, got up, got some brunch, went to Stadium Swim, watched some college football. You can't beat Stadium Swim on a football Saturday or Sunday. Really beautiful, beautiful day. And then went to the Sphere early. The traffic to the Sphere was a little chaotic, even to the parking. But seeing that sucker up close and personal, I'd seen it from a distance. You really get to see how big that thing is. And then going into it, you're like, okay, this is cool. We went and got merch. Tried to get some food, but really there was only a couple levels that had real food besides just chips and like sodas. And the lines were brutally long. You would have missed a couple different fights, probably 3 fights just to try to wait in line for food. So we're like, we'll get food after. We'll eat some chips. Probably not the best of ideas, but I didn't want to miss a fight. Go in there, and you feel like you're in like a SpaceX convention center or something. I felt like I was in a rocket ship lab because all you're doing is going up one escalator, up another, up another, up another, and we're all the way on the 400 level. I think we went up probably like 6 escalators, and you're a couple hundred feet in the air, super steep incline. You're like, holy cow. Finally get up there and look at where our seats are during the Raul Rosas fight, and you look down there and you're like, holy cow, I'm a couple hundred feet above ground. And it took my body to settle a little bit in the Sphere because, I don't know, it just felt like you're high. Your body's just kind of out of whack for a while. But they gave us little wristbands when we sat down to help light up the event. And as most people know, a full, $20 million investment for the Sphere did not start until the main card. So in the prelims, they still have some cool things on the Sphere going on. They still have some cool motions going through and different backgrounds in the Sphere, which is really cool. But you're not getting the full movie effect, like 3D-like effect that it's giving until the main event. So we're having a good time. My bets are winning. There was some chaotic fights that we'll break down early that really made the night seem like it was going to be a blast. And getting into the main card, man, I don't even know how to explain this. I saw Brendan Schaub said he was hating on it some way, saying it's like the party city of an event or something. I assumed that he went there in person. I didn't watch his video. But it's like you're watching a pretty high quality UFC card, obviously. I gave it an 8 out of 10. And you feel like you're in your own igloo with just crazy high pixel video coming at you. The first video, the history of the fighter, the rocks and stuff felt like it was 3D coming at you. You look down, the walkouts were cool. We were pretty up there. The octagon's pretty high. I like to, when I go watch events in person, try to watch the fighters in the octagon and not the big screen. They had like 2 little pop-out videos during the fight, which was good because you don't want the whole screen to be the fight or no one's going to watch the fight. They're watching the Sphere. So I try to watch, but you're pretty far up there, man. If you don't have good eyes, to be honest, you're not going to be able to see much. And I posted some stuff on Bowsandtkos if you want to look at it. But the quality of the video, the haptic feedback seats are pretty cool, although they didn't use them as much as I thought they would. Lighting up our wristbands like a concert with the colors of what's going on in the films. The films were pretty cool. It was more about the graphics and just the video, in my opinion, than the quality of the show. But the walkout experience there, insane, so loud, right? There's not just the noise of fans screaming because you have speakers all over you, so you felt like you were kind of in the event a little more with the audio. And yeah, it was just a cool experience. You know, everyone obviously in there was a pretty big fight fan. I just had a good time. Wish they had better concession lines for food so I wasn't so tipsy by the end of the night. But I really enjoyed it. The only thing is I had bet my ticket price on the Sugar Show. Me and my buddies did, and that did not quite fare well for us. So a little bit of a sour taste at the end of the night. But overall, I just thought it was just a cool experience. I mean, I can't even put it into words. Just the feeling in there was something, you know, you look at the thing, there's nothing like that. You know, it's hard to explain, but once in a lifetime event. I'm glad to say I was there. I thought the fights were quality overall. I know a lot of people have been hating on it. But everyone I talked to, we all had a good time. And it was definitely one for the books. And just the video coming out of that and rewatching, like, oh my gosh. Like, it just felt like I was 20 years ahead of time of what's going on in today's world at the Sphere. That was a big takeaway. But let's talk the fights. So, in the early prelims, we had Raul Rosas Jr. with a unanimous decision over Arichi Long. And to be honest, this fight was a little bit of a dud. You have the young stud from Mexico coming in. He needs to put on a show, and he really just did what he needed to do to get a win, which granted, the kid's like 19. He's fighting a guy in his prime at, I think, 31. But you want to open the show at the Sphere. And Raul grappled his way to victory. He laid on Arichi Lang to steal rounds. Round one, Raul got a takedown midway through the round after they were feeling themselves out. And Arichi Lang was able to defend 3 attempts and was even with the strikes that were exchanged, probably about 15. There wasn't a lot of action. And then round 3, Raul had worn on Arichi Lang throughout the fight and got 2 takedowns. There was some good striking by Arichi Lang as long as he could stay on his feet. You know, it's the third and final round. He needed a finish. He tried. But Raul was too much with the grappling. Statistically, Raul landed 98 total strikes, 41 of them significant. He had 3 takedowns in 7 attempts. So Arichi Lang did his best to defend, you know, less than 50%. But he did have 7 minutes and 32 seconds of control time, so about a round and a half. And Arichi Lang landed 80 total strikes, 22 of them significant. So about 18 less total strikes and half the significant strikes. So now Raul extends his winning streak to 3. He's 5-1 in the UFC at under 20 years old, which is pretty insane to think about. New world of UFC and MMA. Arichi Lang starts a new losing streak. He is 3-2-1 since 2022. So what's next? I think Arichi Lang and Christian Quinones would make a lot of sense. And for Raul, how about Kyung Ho Kong? I think that would be a blast as well. Moving on into the prelims, we had Joshua Van with unanimous decision over Edgar Chairez. And this fight was a war. This kicked the Sphere off, let me tell you what. Edgar was piecing up Joshua to start this fight and almost got a finish. I was like, oh, damn, there goes my parlays. But Van was able to get to the second round somehow. Honestly, not too sure how. Maybe because he's just a young blood himself. I think he's like 22. But from there, he was able to mix in his grappling, mix in his boxing, control the fight. It was a slugfest each and every round. But Joshua was able to get better of the striking exchanges. And Edgar Chairez was exactly what the Mexico fighting style is like. Take a couple hits to give a hit. And he was getting beat down, but he was durable and he kept the fight going. But Joshua Van was the more technical fighter and got the victory. And you'll see through the stats here. Statistically, Edgar landed 87 total strikes, 79 of them significant. So when he did punch, he punched hard. He had 1 submission attempt and was 0 for 2 in takedown attempts. And a lot of that was just trying to change it up due to exhaustion towards, late round 2 and 3. But Joshua landed 183 total strikes, so almost 100 more, and 118 of those significant. He had 3 takedowns and 4 minutes and 26 seconds of control time. Him getting a takedown after almost getting finished was the huge highlight for him, and he went to the well to get the victory. So the young Joshua starts a new winning streak. He moves to 4-1 in the UFC. telling you a new era in MMA. And Edgar starts a new losing streak. He drops to 1-2 and 1 in the UFC. So where do these flyweights go next? I would love to see Joshua take on Rafael Filho. And for Edgar, how about Odie Osborne, who also fought on the card, and we'll get to his fight in a minute. But also in the prelims, here we had a Mexican fighter. Well, I need to double check. I don't think he's Mexican. He's like South American. I don't want to murder this here. Yeah, we know he lives in Chicago. Let's see if it tells me where he's from. From Chile. So close enough, right? Not necessarily directly Mexican, but still put on a show for the Latinos. But I love me some Ignacio Bahamondes. I always felt like he's this close to really being a rocket ship in the division. But he showed out here. He was aggressive. He came forward against a guy who doesn't mind to get in a scrap and a brawl, and he just took it to him. He used his length. He was too hard of a hitter and was way too technical of a striker for Torres, and battered him up. Nice knees, nice long shots right down the pipe, and that earned him performance of the night. So a well-deserved 50 Gs for Ignacio Bahamondes. I think at one point he was even the underdog, and I was riding the Bahamondes train for sure. But statistically, Manuel landed 20 total and significant strikes, and Ignacio landed 26 total, 31 total, and 26 of them significant. But he had 2 knockdowns. He was landing them stiff. So now Ignacio extends his winning streak to 2. He is 4-1 since 2022. And Manuel starts a new losing streak. He is also 4-1 in the UFC. So what's next? Well, I think an absolute banger between Ignacio Bahamondes and Garam Kutateladze. That would make a ton of sense. And for Manuel, he could fight Daniel Zellhuber, who also fought on the card. I think that would be ideal. Moving on, in the prelim headliner, and what a show this was, a lot better than I expected. We had Norma Dumont with a unanimous decision over Irene Aldana. Another fight I got right, but did not guess the outcome at all. I mean, this fight caught me as surprise, as I thought Norma's best way to win this fight would be grappling. She's going to get takedowns early and often, but she kind of had like a prove it. She wanted to show people like Sean Brady, I can strike and I can hang out here with the best of them in the division. And she just kickboxed Irene almost the entire night. She was able to do really well by closing the distance and not keeping Aldana, allowing her to move forward. She kept her on her back foot and was just brute forcefully kind of forcing Aldana back. She didn't look for takedowns, I think, until like late round 2, she finally took one, or maybe even round 3. And they weren't really real attempts. It was just kind of giving her a different look. But Norma was so confident. You could see it from the get. She didn't need to go to the grappling well. And a massive, massive statement for Norma Dumont, outstriking one of the best strikers in the division. And I really do think since she has come down to bantamweight, she is the best version of herself. There was an accidental clash of heads that opened up Aldana in the second round. And after a bunch of shots later in the round and in the third round, you probably saw the viral images of Irene's head. It was not pretty. Some brutal blood and gushing. Some of the nastiest cuts I've ever seen. I'll tell you what, one thing they did for Noche UFC is let them fight and let them go to the last bell. There was no soft sport stuff here. Statistically, Irene landed 69 total and significant strikes, and Norma landed 159 total and significant, so a lot more volume, while going 0 for 5 in takedown attempts. But again, I don't really think she sold out on those attempts. It was just to give different looks or make her think about it. So now Norma extends her winning streak to 5. She is 5-1 since 2022. She moves up 3 spots in the rankings to number 5. And Irene starts a new losing streak. She is 2-2 since 2022. She moves down 1 spot in the rankings to number 6. Where do these ladies go next? I would love to see Norma, again, she's looked amazing since coming down to bantamweight after the featherweight division was scrapped. I'd love to see her fight Macy Chiasson. That'd be a rematch of 2022, which was a split decision, a very close one. And for Irene, how about a scrap with Germaine de Randamie I would assume she's going to need some time off for that brutal cut. But after that, I think taking on the veteran would be a fun one for both women. Moving on into the main event, the big show. And what a show this was. We had lazy boy Ronaldo Rodriguez with unanimous decision over Odie Osborne. And I was happy about the result, but I did not think it was warranted. But looking at the fight, these two sure did make a scene at the press conference and at the weigh-ins. They didn't really back up all that trash talk in the octagon, though. I was hoping to see some crazy striking, a war, these two going at it. And we got a decent version of that as Lazy Boy was completely rocked. And I thought was going to be knocked out right out the gates. But he was somehow able to have that durability and toughness to get in round 2. We saw this a few times throughout the night. And just like Joshua Van was able to, he just outlasted Odie. I did think live, which I have not watched it back, but I'm pretty confident even looking at the stats, that Odie won rounds 1 and round 3 to win the fight. Clearly with the knockdown and almost finish, he got round 1. Lazy Boy grappled and outstruck barely Odie for round 2. But I thought Odie did a lot more in round 3, which should have won the fight, especially the final round. But in round 1, Odie was using his length advantage and his speed very well, which I didn't know if he would have the speed advantage against the younger fighter, but he did. And I thought that he would get, he even had a submission attempt after the knockdown, couldn't quite get the finish. And I thought he would continue to do that. But round 2, Ronaldo went to work. He got a takedown, got a lot of ground and pound to steal that round. And round 3, again, I thought Odie landed more volume. He even got a takedown of his own. And when it happened, I was like, oh man, Odie's going to win this fight with grappling, which has been his weakness. How funny is this going to be? But I believe Ronaldo was able to reverse it, get up on his feet. But still, I thought that it was clearly round 3 to Odie. And this is the stats. Ronaldo landed 68 total strikes. 35 of them were significant. He had a reversal and was 1 for 2 in takedown attempts. But he did have 9 minutes and 14 seconds of control time. So close to 2 rounds. Now, Odie landed 55 total strikes. So 13 less and 37 of them significant. He had 1 takedown in 3 attempts, 2 submission attempts, a reversal, and a knockdown with 1 minute and 7 seconds of control time himself. If I pull up the UFC page and we look at the round-specific results here, I'm pretty sure they favor Odie as well from memory. So we look at round 3 specifically. Odie landed 19 strikes to Ronaldo's 14. Odie had a takedown and control time. So yeah, I just thought that's how it would shake out. Regardless, Ronaldo moves to 2-0 in the UFC. He extends his winning streak to 7. And Odie extends his losing streak to 3. He is 2-4 since 2022. So for these flyweights, I would love to see Ronaldo take on Alessandro Costa. And Odie can fight Felipe dos Santos. But then Noche, the cap of the event, this also made the event so much fun to see in person. A potential fight of the year candidate where we had a fight I did pick wrong, but Esteban Rabovics had a split decision over Daniel Zellhuber. Fight of the night, 50 G's for these boys, and they went to absolute war. I mean, what a fight this was. The highlight of the entire event and showcase what the Mexican fighting spirit is absolutely all about. I mean, my goodness. You watch this fight and you're a fight fan, you appreciate everything that showed out here. The pace, the volume, the energy, the excitement, the durability, the willingness to exchange, and the toughness was on complete display. There was a little bit of everything for any type of fight fan here. And there were a lot of fights where you think one man was done. You know, the Ronaldo Rodriguez fight, the Joshua Van fight, now this fight. You would think these guys are going to be out of the fight early, but Daniel, after being rocked up early and up against the cage, somehow, dang near concussed probably, was able to just bob enough up against the cage, bob and weave to survive through the round. And then he came back and put on a clinic in the second round against Esteban. Beautiful jab, which he did get going late in round 1 as well. Using his length to his advantage, just boxing him up. And then round 3 was absolutely Max Holloway type. Let's just clang and bang. And both men gave it everything they had. Daniel Zellhuber was even able to rock Esteban. It looked like he might get a finish at one point. Esteban probably leaned the more significant damaging fights throughout the fight. But both guys were rocked. It was absolute carnage and chaos. And the fact that both of these guys were able to last those 15 minutes is that's what Noche was all about, man. It was such a good time. I mean, look at the stats. Daniel landed 121 total and significant. He had a knockdown and was 0 for 1 in takedowns. And then Esteban landed 156 total and significant. I mean, the fact that Esteban didn't have a knockdown and almost put the lights out of Daniel standing is insane. And that Daniel had that knockdown and Esteban was able to fire away as much as he could in round 3. Doubly insane. What a freaking event, man. This was so much fun. Being in the Sphere, too, I was just screaming probably the entire fight. Oh, man. But Daniel ends his 3-fight winning streak, starts a new losing streak. He moves to 3-2 since 2022. And Esteban extends his winning streak to 3 and is 4-1 in the UFC. So what's next? I think Esteban and Joe Selecki, that would be a lot of fun. And for Daniel, like I said earlier, how about Manuel Torres? I know that 2 Mexican fighters going at it, they might not want to do that, but would love to see it. Then we had the start of the big 3. We had Diego Lopez with a unanimous decision over Brian Ortega. I was riding the Ortega train, and boy, did it come to a screeching halt. The Diego Lopez rocket is on full display. You know, Diego's been very hyped after his last few wins, and he absolutely showed the world why. His skills were on full display at UFC Noche. And in round 1, Diego, super aggressive per usual, almost finished Brian with some heavy hands. And Brian really was on retreat the rest of the round and was just trying to move and survive. So, again, a lot of these fights, round 1 looked like there was going to be a finish. Brian was able to last, not surprised. But round 2, Diego had advantages, but Brian was able to get his boxing going. I mean, Brian has world-class boxing. When you're rocked, it's not easy just to come and flow in and get your game plan back on track, but he did do that, although Diego was still hitting hard. And then round 3, being down 2 rounds, Brian definitely needed a finish, but Diego was just too strong, man. He was able to defend the takedown attempts of Brian, which I thought he should have done earlier. Probably didn't help. He got rocked. But Diego has been able to set the tone versus all of his opponents right out off the rip. It's like a football team. When you come out and you're just smashing the other team to an easy touchdown, it almost sucks the soul out of you. He is so aggressive and so big for the division. He comes in and just sets the tone and puts his opponents on retreat. And it's like their souls have been taken, and it definitely felt like that for Ortega, which is a bummer for UFC Noche. Statistically, Brian landed 69 total strikes, 63 of them significant. He was 0 for 2 in takedown attempts. And Diego landed 113 total, 106 of them significant, with a takedown and 2 minutes and 45 seconds of control time. So Diego extends his winning streak to 5. He is 5-1 in the UFC. He moves up 10 spots to in the rankings. That can't be right. Yep, to number 3. And Brian starts a new losing streak. He is 1-2 since 2022. And he moves down 2 spots in the rankings to number 5. So what's next? I do think Diego and Alexander Volkanovski would be absolute carnage and would be so much fun. That's the fight to make, especially with, obviously, the title fight being booked. And for Brian, he could square up with Arnold Allen. That is another absolute banger. Was bummed to see that, but man, you got to give credit to Diego Lopez. He has taken the division under wrap, man. Speaking about taking it back, Valentina Shevchenko. The one time I pick against her, I picked her in both Alexa Grasso fights and her pretty much her entire career, man. She gets it done via unanimous decision over Alexa Grasso. Mexico was definitely had a damper in their heart after this loss. But it's pretty much how, if you were to lay out a roadmap of this is how Valentina gets the strap back, This is exactly what happened. The path to victory was laid out for the flyweight GOAT, and she was going to have a heavy dose of grappling. That's exactly what happened. The Bullet got takedowns with ease. Alexa just really kind of accepted bottom position. She was trying to throw up submissions, throw strikes and elbows from her back, versus pushing away, getting to the back, trading distance, getting onto a hip, shrimping out. And I was just surprised that Alexa wasn't more prepared for the grappling. She's been in there for, 30 minutes, pretty much. She knows how Valentina works, but you got to credit Valentina. This is why she is so good. She finds a path to victory. She finds where the weaknesses are in their armor, and she executes. And the execution and timing on Valentina's entries for the takedowns, absolutely brilliant. You have to give her credit for that. Alexa really just didn't get anything going the entire fight. And I just thought it was weird that, especially as you got into round 3, 4, 5 championship rounds, she was willing to stay on her back, try to throw up submissions. Maybe she had saw something on film where she thought she could land a submission versus getting up and letting this go to a boxing fight where she's had a lot of success. Statistically, Alexa landed 153 total strikes, only 18 of them significant because a lot of it was pitter-patter from her back. She did get 1 takedown in 4 attempts, 2 submission attempts, and 49 seconds of control time. She had 2, labeled submission attempts, but she was really moving for a lot of those. And Valentina landed 193 total strikes, 45 of them significant. She had 8 takedowns and 12 attempts. So again, if she wanted it, she got it. And 16 minutes and 4 seconds of control time. So more than 3 rounds of control time. That will win you a fight. And again, she had 193 total strikes, only 45 significant because it's just a lot of ground and pound. So Valentina starts a new winning streak, gets her title back after a year and a half. She is 2-1-1 since 2022. And Alexa starts a new losing streak. She is 3-1-1 since 22, and she moves into the number 1 contender spot. So what's next? Well, obviously, I think it's going to be Valentina and Manon Fiorot, who was the backup fighter and weighed in for the title. And for Alexa, I would like to see her try to get back on track and have a scrap with Natalia Silva, who looked like a world beater in her last fight. And I can see, especially a lot of people that just bought the pay-per-view, didn't watch the prelims, how they could take away the event a little bit. If you're going to judge an event, watch the whole card. Don't want to hear this, I just watched the main event. But yeah, a damper in my evening for sure. We had Merab Dvalishvili with unanimous decision over Sean O'Malley. And when this fight was originally booked, I was like, hey, if it's not going to be in Vegas, I probably won't go. I really don't want to invest in another UFC ticket price because they're getting spendy to go watch Sean get taken down a few times. Over the course of this getting booked, oh my God, he's headlining the Sphere. I thought they were going to have Max Holloway headline it and Ilya Taporia. Like, wow, that'd be cool, a one-time event. And then just kind of thinking about what would Tim and Sean's game plan be. I fully convinced myself what Sean was going to do. But much like the co-main, we knew Merab's path to victory would be grappling. So did Sean, so did Tim, so did the whole world. But that's exactly what happened. The wrinkle in this fight, I think that not a lot of people are talking about, was that Merab was just so patient. He didn't go in like a bull, try to close in on the red and get the takedown. As he was just upright, moving like crazy. Just moving like crazy for the entire freaking fight. He was never in one place. When you're a sniper and a precise striker, that's great. But if the guy's never moving, it's really hard to really let those shots go and find the target. Plus, if you're a kicker, you don't really want to kick to give up those takedown opportunities, the easy ones. So it was kind of like a neutral out situation. He was moving so much. Sean wasn't kicking as much as normal to find distance. And a lot of his strikes are just punching the body to find that. And it just made for a lot different fight than what we're used to seeing from the Sugar Show. But you have to credit Merab. Moving and bouncing around, making it hard for Sean to land power shots, and having the cardio to do so. Not many guys could do that. But also, Sean, was eliminated with his kicks. He didn't really use those teep kicks as much, probably being worried for the takedown attempts. And the surprise again was how patient Sean was being. down early in the fight. Like, you get taken down, you get held down, you lose rounds 1 and 2. I figured that he would be more aggressive as the fight went on and make Merab pay when entering for the takedowns. He's 5'4", you're 5'10". Come in with those elbows, come in with those knees. He did throw knees, but when he's blasted in, try to time one. He's up against the cage. Instead of trying to break his hands, get those elbows. I just expected a lot more violence from the Sugar Show, and I really did not see that. And maybe I'm just a low IQ guy that's like, you can't do that. But I have seen a lot of fighters have success as a longer fighter. It'll get the guy off you if you're cutting open his eye, especially Merab. You already knew he had a cut coming into the fight. Really didn't take advantage of that. But you could tell he's just thinking about not being taken down. But you have to credit Merab again. Not only was he moving around, not only did he have the cardio to do what he was doing for the entire fight, but his takedown attempts were beautifully, beautifully timed. He didn't just come in. He blast double leg Sean, hit the hips hard, and Sean had no answer for that. And Sean and Tim has even said since the fight that they were expecting a lot more single legs, and the double legs threw him off. But he was blast double legging those suckers, football takedowns. And you have to credit him for that. It was beautifully timed. It's really hard to do much when you're getting blasted back into the cage. And he was timing them after, like, Sean would throw a strike, then he would blast in. But finally, by round 5, Sean got some momentum. He landed a very clean kick right probably under the rib, right in the liver. It dug his toes into Merab's stomach, and Merab was visibly hurting. He was on the retreat just trying to get through the round. And Sean did what he could to try to chase him down, but he couldn't land a lot more clean body shots to try to get the body TKO finish. But to be honest, if we look at the damage, Sean probably landed bigger shots. And I know there's a lot of drama of Sean kind of hating on the internet and trolling that he won 3 rounds in the fight. I mean, this was absolute domination by Merab. I did not feel excitement about where Sean was the entire fight until round 5. I thought it was 4-1 clearly. And the stats show that. And you have to, again, credit Merab. The guy's got an insane story, been counted out, working another job most of his UFC career. Overcomes being 5'4", I'm 5'7". Like, props to you, dude. Being a construction worker, coming from, rags to riches. You love the UFC for these people's stories. I mean, you can't find much better in a lot of other sports. The UFC creates diamonds in the rough, and that's what exactly Merab is. So you have to credit him. You have to root for him. I just personally was a little bummed because, the Sugar Show's my guy. He's from Montana. He's doing his thing, and he's a fun fighter to watch. But I did have a moment of just appreciation from Merab, and I hope a lot of you fight fans do as well. But let's break down the stats. I mean, they're pretty lopsided here. Sean landed 49 total strikes, 47 of them significant, and Merab landed 214 total, 82 of those significant. He had 6 takedowns and 15 attempts. So, again, credit Sean for defending pretty well. He came somewhat prepared for that. And he had 10 minutes and 3 seconds of control time. So, Merab extends his winning streak to 11. He hasn't lost since April of 2018. And Sean extends his 6-fight winning streak, starts a new losing streak, and moves into the number 1 contender spot. So what's next? Well, I am pretty confident it's going to be Merab and Umar, which I know Merab has kind of shied away from that. But it's going to be Umar, and it's going to be one hell of a showdown. I can't wait to see it. And for Sean, it has been announced this week he is getting surgery on his hip, a torn labrum or something like that. But he's going to be out for a while. Probably won't fight till next summer. But I would love to see it. The UFC world would love to see it. Dana, Sean Shelby, they're all going to want to see it. The Sugar Show and Corey Sandhagen in an absolute banger. But UFC Noche, it was one hell of a showdown. The reason it didn't get a 9 or 10 out of my rankings is just because, again, UFC 299, UFC 300 happened this year. Those were absolutely stacked cards. But the Sphere was one hell of an experience. The fights were great. That Daniel Zellhuber, Rabovic's fight, one for the ages, man. But next week, again, a week off. Then we go back to international travel to Paris. We have a nice, fun, and early fight night card headlined by Renato Moicano and Benoit Saint-Denis. That's episode 66. I'm your host, Shane Gillette. See you next week.